So I decided to create a video calling it The Perfect Storm of Property Purchasing in New York. The reason I want to make this video is over the last 8 months, I have been through 2 loans. My first loan was denied, same company, Bank of America. And my second loan is currently cleared to closing. And I've received my closing documents and we're just waiting. So I'm not going to post this video until I have keys in hand. I think that's the best policy before, just in case, you never know. And I've learned that the hard way. The reason I say that is I want to tell you that in order to purchase in New York, you've got to have stamina. I really feel like you got to be aggressive. And I feel like you've got to know the rules and regulations really well and shop around and be aggressive. You have to be aggressive. You have to email people. You have to be on top of them. I have found in the process that the team that you assemble, when I talk about your team, I'm talking about your realtor, your closing lawyer, and the loan officer. A lot of them think they're entitled to your money. They want to sit around. They want to rubber stamp things. And they don't have all the facts, which you think they would have all the facts because they are the experts. So this takes a lot in order to purchase, from my perspective, takes a lot of energy and a lot of research and a lot of effort. If you're not willing to do that, go the conventional route and do whatever you need to do according to the rules and regulations of the bank and the co-op or the co-op board. But there are ways of getting around all of that. And I will tell you that I am closing on an apartment for which I have given 3% down, so $7,500. And my current listed closing costs is $183 for interest and about $250 for the co-op closing costs. There's 2 sets of closing costs. They don't tell you this. The co-op closing costs of $250, which is a refundable move-in deposit. So I'm gonna go through this process with you and tell you about how my first loan went, what happened, what the ins and outs were, what I learned, and then I'm gonna talk to you about my second loan. And I learned even more then. So in the first loan, I really did my research. I went around and I looked at all the programs. I was considered a first-time home buyer. So with that, a lot of banks have incentives. I went with Bank of America because I really researched. I went onto YouTube and I researched the information. I listened to others, and Bank of America, if you are a first-time buyer and your home is located in the right census area, meaning that it is in a moderate to low income bracket, you can receive up to 3% at a max of $10,000 as a down payment, and you can receive up to $7,500 in closing costs. One caveat that I have never seen in any video, and one thing that you need to read real well, is that the 3% up to $10,000 is taxable. So you might think, wow, I'm getting all this free money, but you're gonna have to pay taxes on it at the end of the year. So you need to decide if that's worth it. I think it definitely is. Free money is free money. So in moving forward, I got all my information together. I put my application together on Bank of America's website. And the way Bank of America works is that they send your application to a queue. So I got a lending officer from Bank of America in California. Unfortunately, he doesn't know the rules for co-ops. He doesn't understand co-ops. And so the process took a little bit longer before I was transferred. What happened was, these officers who are pre-approving you for a loan, they just pre-approve you. They're not really going to dig in and think about your process from what I think and my perspective. What happened was I had a full-time job that I had been at for a year and a half. I hadn't been working previously. And I had a part-time job for a year. He was aware of this. It was in my application. He said, oh, we'll just ask for an exception. And he gave me a pre-approval for an extremely large amount of loan. More than he should have, because those two jobs should not have been put together. And we moved forward. He also shared with me the website, which I will try and put at the bottom of this YouTube, for the census. Everyone uses it. It's an open app, and you can put your actual address in it, and it will tell you what it is for census income area. So again, moderate to low, and you're eligible for a grant. First-time buyer, you're eligible for a grant. That's great outside of New York. But in New York, we have different rules. We have different regulations. A co-op is a different animal. So when I was looking at the co-ops, I was really hitting a brick wall. My first realtor in this first deal, I presented her a list of apartments I wanted to see. So I went on StreetEasy, I went on Zillow, I went on Trula, I went on everything. In case someone missed something and didn't post it, I was looking for it. And I looked for apartments that appealed to me, and I put them into the census tracker and came up with a list of those apartments that met my needs in the moderate to low. And I submitted them to my realtor. My realtor showed me everything that I gave to her, and when she presented others, they did not come anywhere near the standard of what I was looking for. And so she really never produced anything for me to look at. My loan was transferred to a New York-based loan officer. At that point, he said, look, you don't have enough years. And I said, well, I was told there would be an exception that could be done, da, da, da. He said, well, you're going to base your income on only one job. So I had selected an apartment that still fit within the parameters of my income to debt ratio. So I was fine. So we moved forward. The other thing that was interesting is that there was a conversation about the owner of the building owning more than 50% of the shares. So there was more building owner properties that was rented out than there were people who actually owned a co-op, portion of the co-op, and lived there. That's a problem. But again, we still move forward. The click of this, or the crutch of this, is that my loan officer had been working individually as a Bank of America representative with the sponsor of the building, the owner of the building, for a couple of months. They all thought they were approved by Bank of America and that Bank of America was on board. It wasn't. So we went through the process of underwriting. Thing to note, if you are renting at this point, you need to have enough money in your account to show that you can cover your down payment, your closing costs, and you've got to cover your rent. So if you've got 6 months left on your rent, you need to have 6 months worth of income, or you need to sublease or assign your lease. Assigning your lease is the best. I did that. Bank of America went through its process. There were no exceptions, and I was denied. I was denied for 2 reasons. One reason, I did not have 2 years of consistent work. I grieved them and won it internally. And the other was that the co-op wasn't approved for lending because of the number of units, which, since my loan officer had been working with the sponsor for months, should have known and should have never even accepted my application, in my opinion. So in less than a month, I was left to my lease because I had assigned it. I was told my loan was denied and I had to quickly find a new apartment and move. So I actually moved to a nice apartment, unseen. I signed the lease unseen because I had no time. No realtors returning my calls. It was just the market was really tight in the Bronx at the time. So that was that. So I decided not to take it easy, and after all of that turmoil, to go back into the market 2 months after being denied. So I decided, well, maybe I won't be going back to Bank of America. Maybe I will look back at M&T, because I had looked at M&T for a while. M&T has a relationship and is a preferred lender for DPAL and DPAL Plus under the State of New York Mortgage Association. They do not have the same benefits as a first-time buyer, but what they do have is a 3% down forgiven loan towards down payment. So it's not as good as Bank of America, but I also found an apartment that I liked that was really inexpensive, right across the street from where I currently live, and it was not in a moderate to low income area. So I kind of had to make a choice. So this is what I want to talk about with, I've already talked about kind of the loan officers. Loan officers not sometimes knowing what they're doing, like giving me a pre-approval letter for an excessive amount of money. A loan officer working with a building to get them approved, knowing they haven't been approved, but allowing me to put an application in. So I went with a different realtor to see this apartment. He showed me 2 apartments in the complex. The complex has quite a few openings. It's 9 buildings. But every board has a different rule and perspective. So I was interested. I liked the apartment. I wanted to do a DPAL. I wanted to do a DPAL Plus, and I wanted to do a construction loan because the apartment was cheap. It was $140,000, but it needed a new kitchen. It needed a new bathroom. It needed the floors to be redone. It needed this. It needed a few things. So I'm working with M&T Bank, and I say to the guy, well, this is what I make. And he says, well, you're out of the range. And I'm like, no, according to this web, no, we're out of the range. So I sent him a link to the web page that showed the new year's increase in income that I met. So we kept on talking, and another thing came up, and he said, well, whatever it says is on the web. And I'm like, I said, no, I'm sorry, but you are a preferred lender for DPAL. Number one, you should know all of these rules. I shouldn't have to be looking for these rules and telling you what they are. Again, that's about being aggressive. And that's about knowing your stuff. So then I went back and I found out that the DPAL Plus money was all used up. For 2 weeks, this guy was letting me have a conversation with him, and he didn't know there was no money left in DPAL. So I told my realtor, okay. Then my realtor came back and told me, well, the board has some requirements. The board requires 10% down, which isn't bad. And the board requires that you have a year's worth of maintenance and mortgage in the bank on reserve. I wasn't interested in that kind of deal. I knew there was a better deal out there, an easier deal. Not an easier deal, there's more work, but a better deal out there. So I said to him, you know what? There is a couple properties I've looked at before. Why don't we go back to them? Because those properties I could do a 3% down, and I can get closing costs paid for by Bank of America. So I sent him on his way. One of the ones he went to was the one that I had originally applied for and was in a loan for that was denied. He went back to another one, and I said, talk to them, get their loan officers that are associated with their project, and ask them if they'll do a 3% loan down. He came back. Now, all the realtors I've talked to don't understand this process, and they don't want to learn the process. That's part of the problem. They're lazy, in my opinion. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to know about it, and they don't want to take the time. So I explained the process to two realtors by now. So I said to him, go back to this realtor and ask him what the options are and if they'll be if they can take a 3% down loan from Sony Mae or from Bank of America. He came. Sorry, my dog is having a field day. He came back and said, "Oh, here is the loan officer for the bank. Call them for the building." So I went back and I called them, and the loan officer was like, "Oh, I'm 15% down, required." So I went back and I said, "You know what? I'm going to make my own calls." So I looked up the realtor online for that project. I called him. He said, "Oh, I have 3 banks, and one actually is a 3%." So my realtor didn't present that to me, didn't ask the probably right questions, and was stubborn, didn't want to listen, and wanted me to take the first apartment he showed me so that he could make a commission. I'm sorry, that's not me. That might be some people, but it's not me. So we went back to a conversation of, I released him. I said, "You know what? I don't need your services." So then I went back and I looked at the unit that I had purchased before, and the owner owns multiple buildings, and he's refurbishing multiple buildings. So I looked at one of his other buildings, and at a higher price, even a little smaller size, but a better location, there was an apartment that I liked. We agreed that I talked to his realtor, and because they had empathy for me, and maybe sympathy, that I had not achieved my last loan, they were really willing to work with me. And so I used the same realtor as the seller. Very uncommon, not suggested, but that empathy and that ability for them to connect with the lawyer on the other side worked to my advantage. Because the lawyer on the other side they are all overwhelmed, lawyers. They will tell you they are overwhelmed and they are slow. We fashioned an agreement that would benefit me. I made an offer at full price. The offer included the seller would pay the 1% flip tax. The seller would pay his own closing costs. The seller had offered in the advertisement 6 months maintenance, $4,300. And the offer also said that the seller would pay the remainder balance, about 6 months of my lease, which is about $10,000. That meant that when I went for my application for the loan, I didn't have to worry about having $10,000 in the bank. It was covered in the agreement. After fashioning this, I spoke with my first of my 2 Bank of America representative loan officers. This loan officer green lighted the process, even said to me specifically, make sure it is spelled out directly that your lease is being paid for, so that when the underwriters ask me, why don't you have enough money in the bank to cover this, I can go back and point to the agreement, showing them that it's there. So we put in our request. Also, when you're picking your staff, when you're talking about loan officers and so, challenge them. Tell them what you need and what you want. Tell them you want communication. Tell them you want follow-up. Don't let the process spin out of control. So we put in the request. It took 2 weeks, as usual with this lawyer, because remember, I've already been through the process because it's the same law firm. They're very slow. They came back with a purchase agreement that didn't include any of the concessions. So then I had to talk to my lawyer, had to explain the whole process to him again, because he couldn't remember. I think out of the 5 times I've called him about it, could not remember my specific loan and purchase agreement parameters. Technology is not his friend. No, he doesn't use it very well. And he doesn't remember what my stipulations are. Every time I call him, I have to remind him. It's very frustrating. He's had multiple nasty emails from me, let me tell you. So we go through the process. We get a purchase agreement after a couple weeks. So again, this process is elongated now, right? And I send it to my loan officer, and she says, "Sorry, I no longer work for Bank of America. You're gonna have a new loan officer. Here's his name." I'm like, okay. So I get a hold of the new loan officer, and he says, "What are you talking about? You cannot get that kind of money back with this loan." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? This is green light. I have emails. This is okay." No. The most you can get back in a concession is 3% on a 3% loan. It's a rule. That 3%, which in my case is $7,500, would go towards closing costs first, and then the $7,500 that Bank of America, up to $7,500 Bank of America will pay towards closing costs, would go towards points. So the $10,007 for my rent and the $4,300 for maintenance was dead. It was unable to be worked into the agreement. So I had offered full price with these concessions. We had to go back and have the document rewritten. 2 more weeks go by. More conversations with my lawyer, trying to explain to him the process and why this is so difficult and what the rules were and why I was doing it a certain way. It was a big headache. A couple weeks go by and we finally have a new purchase agreement. And we submit it. My lawyer says to me, "This has become very difficult. It's a difficult close. I'm going to have to charge you more. I can't go at the rate that I currently sent to you and you signed." And I'm saying to myself, you have asked for a top rate in the field. You're at the top, and you want more because you had to actually work. You actually had to put some energy into it. You actually had to think about my loan and me individually versus rubber stamping everything. So I'm like, I really don't care because Bank of America is giving me a $700 loan grant towards closing costs. And because the 1% isn't in there, which is like which would be almost $2,500, and because the closing cost for the lawyer is not in there, I have extra money, I have room. So I can afford another $500, $600, $700, $800 for the lawyer. I still don't appreciate that though, because I told him in advance this was going to be difficult because I knew it was going to be difficult. So we get all of it together. It's finally settled, and we go towards underwriting. Underwriting, of course, asks some questions, and we go over some things, and I provide them information, and the package goes over to co-op approval. And of course, it didn't pass co-op approval. So that means it goes to co-op exception area. Now, this is the misnomer, because when they said co-op exception area, I assumed that meant that the co-op itself, its parent company, its owner, were going to be evaluated and looked at for future sales, for turnaround, for liquidity, whatever they need to look at. And I was wrong. The only reason I found this out was because after 2 weeks of being in this process of co-op exception, I called my loan officer's supervisor. Because Bank of America lists their supervisors in their emails. And I really just said to him, I don't know what's going on. I said, I really have been burnt by Bank of America. I mean, he works for Bank of America. I don't care. I've been burnt by Bank of America already once. I've been burnt by my first loan officer because they told me this and it changed. I'm sitting in an exceptions committee and I don't understand what's going on and why it's taking so long. Because you've already given an exception to somebody else in the building. Then he explains to me, the exception isn't about the building, it's about you. We're digging deeper into you and we're evaluating you and we're evaluating your risk factors, and we're determining if we're willing to make a risk on you on this apartment. News to me. Well, I passed it. Not after I had waited another week and not heard anything, and I called the supervisor back again, and I said, you said you were going to jump on board. You were going to make a push. It's been a week. I haven't heard anything. And I got an email 2 hours later that it had been approved and we were going towards closing. So, wow, good. So then I heard back. I did not hear all day from my loan officer. So I sent him an email. I hear we've cleared. Oh, yeah. I'm about to go on vacation for a couple days. I'm like, but you have a couple conditions. He sent me the conditions, and he goes away. And we argue because the conditions are ones that were there on 2/22, and they should have been resolved back then. Why are we talking about conditions that are still existing when we've been sitting around since 2/22, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for this process? It doesn't make any sense. You've got to be on your staff. They're your staff. They're paying them. Come on. You're paying your lawyer. He needs to not be an independent contractor doing his own thing in a vacuum. You need to be on him. Your realtor is getting a commission. They're getting a commission because you are buying. They need to be on your side, and they need to be pushing and working for you. So it comes down to, we're now at the end. We've gone through everything, and we've got closing disclosures. We're waiting. It's been a week since we've been cleared, and no date has been set. So I have pushed my lawyer again, told him that I can't understand that a week has passed and you don't have a closing date. Doesn't make any sense to me. Well, I have 4 people I have to coordinate with, including myself. I'm like, get on the phone, man. Make it happen. So we finished that conversation. He sent me emails that he sent out to everybody, proving that he had reached out once. I sent out my own emails to my bank this morning at 4 a.m. when I woke up. They responded on a Saturday and said, my loan officer said, we are ready to close on the 22nd. We told you this. We're ready to go. I sent a letter to my realtor, supervisor, because my realtor's out. And she said, you were right. We need to close this. I will check and see if we can do the 22nd. So where we are is that, as a recap, to create the perfect storm to use to your benefit all of the grants out there, you've got to, 1, be assertive, aggressive. You've got to do your research. You've got to be willing to get your hands dirty, because it will save you money and it will cost you less to close. You've got to have the right staff. As far as I'm concerned, there are a lot of lazy people out there who think they're entitled to your money. And I'm sorry, but I work too hard for my dollar to give it to somebody to rubber stamp, to show me 2 apartments in the same complex and say, which one do you want? Let's go. Or for a loan officer to not know the rules of their own bank, and they've been in business for years with the bank. You've got to be in the right area. You've got to check your property in advance. You've got to be on the apps, continually looking for property in the right area. I'm not saying that you need to buy a junky apartment. You can buy my apartment's refurbished, but it's at right now, the one we're about to purchase is in the hub, in a hub in Bronx. Very busy. I'm very excited about it, versus the other one which was in the outskirts. You've got to be a first-time buyer, and you've got to go with a bank that has good quality products. Second runner-up for me, if I'm not going to do a Sony May, because Sony May will also charge you a 0.375 extra in interest rate, and you got to stay in the property for at least 10 years. So in the give backs of first-time buyers and closing costs, Citibank comes in pretty well. They're doing pretty well as well. So making sure you're in the right area, making sure you have the right staff who know you're about to do a lot of work and follow up on them and require them to work for their money. You got to have 3% down, because I thought, this is my first thought, is that Bank of America is going to give me 3% towards my down payment now. No, they're going to give it to me at closing. And a seller wants some skin in the game. They're not going to want to say, okay, Bank of America is giving us 3%. You don't have to give us any zero money down. They want to see some money down. So you got to have the money for down payment at 3%, or up to $10,000 from Bank of America. So I had to have $7,500 in the bank to wire. And this is key. The only way to do this, because I mentioned it before, kind of in passing with about boards, buy a sponsored unit. A sponsored unit, number one, doesn't need board approval. Number two, flexible financing. The board, in some cases, wants 10, 15, 20% down. They want a reserve, and they want to interview you. Don't have to do any of that with a sponsored sale. It's done. The owner of my building has 9 buildings. There is opportunity out there. There are other sponsored units as well. Talk to them. Negotiate with them. If they want a 10% down and they won't budge, will they let you do 7% down in cash with a 3% commitment from Bank of America, making your 10%? So I'm telling you that it's doable. I have a lot of naysayers who have walked away. My realtor, for my last realtor before this one, just lost the commission because he refused to listen to me. He wanted to be stubborn. He didn't want to learn the process. And it's spelled out. So, in closing, giving you everything that I've done in order to make it happen. I'm closing on a $250,000 apartment. Let me backtrack. We also had to spend 2 more weeks negotiating because the appraisal came in $15,000 less. So all my concessions were going to be gone anyway because the price came down $15,000. It took an extra 2 weeks to negotiate that contract. With me agreeing to everything, it still took 2 weeks to get it. And Bank of America was wah, wah, wah in my ear. We're going to deny you. Move this along. We're going to deny you. It was very frustrating for 2 weeks. So I'm about to close on a $235,000 one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. I put $7,500 down, which will be returned to me at closing because I'm receiving a 3% down payment grant. I will be paying for my down payment because I'm getting a $7,500 grant towards closing. I will be paying $83 in interest charges. And I will be paying $250 to the co-op for the co-op fee, non-refundable move-in. Again, there are 2 closing costs places you need to look at. There's going to be closing costs, of course, for the bank, but the co-op will have closing costs. In my instance, there's a $350 closing cost for their lawyer for transfer fees. There's a $250 non-refundable cost for moving in. And then there's another $250 fee for something else. I don't remember what it is. Any non-refundable one-time fee can be included in the $7,500 of the grant, is what I've been told. It hasn't been finalized yet. I'm still getting that put into the contract. I had on the 13th sent an email to my realtor saying you need to put your new fee in there, and you need to put these other fees that Bank of America will pay. 2 days later, I got the closing documents, and he never did that, so I had to follow back up with him. So again, it's about being on top of the staff. So $250, $183, and I get my $7,500 back. That's incredible. that is a deal. Now, I'm going to leave my email address. I'm willing to talk to anybody about how I did it. And I'm willing to help people, because you know what? It's about paying it forward. It's about learning the system. It's about making the system work for you. And why should I be paying $1,800 in rent for a one-bedroom apartment when I can own a one-bedroom apartment for, let's say, $450 closing costs, and have a returnable $7,500 deposit that's returned to me at closing? So I have to have a little bit of money in the bank. If you're looking to save and you have to put 20% down, 20% or 15, let's say 10%, is $23,000. It's a lot of money right now. Well, that's my story. I hope it has helped somebody see that there is potential and not to give up, and be patient, be aggressive, be assertive, keep on top of everybody. Thank you.